All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again. Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. First, I would like to begin by giving a big shout out to YouTube user BenDC4L, who gave us the suggestion for this case. And if you have anything you'd like to hear about, this was a user suggestions, a listener suggested this case for us. You can drop your suggestions or for cases in the comment section. If there's anything you'd like to discuss about true crime related, we can, look into it. And also, any other subjects, if there's any other particular topic that you would like to hear more about on this channel, you can drop your suggestions in the comment section below, and we will hopefully get to it at some point. And thank you to everyone who leaves comments on these uploads. But, with that being said, because this was, suggested to us by a listener, I have to confess, the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, the case we're going to talk about today, is something that I had never heard of until a couple days ago. We've had this channel for 2 years now, and before that, I was just a true crime fan like anybody else. And, I followed a lot of cases online, and I really went deep into a handful of cases that we've mentioned here and there. But one thing is, I just never found out about the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. I mean, I didn't even know the name until a couple days ago. So this is going to be a very big learning process for me. You have to bear with me. If I get any of the kind of specifics wrong at this point, I'm open to correction. I'm not super familiar with this yet, but we're going to be learning all about this. The biggest motivation for me to decide and go ahead and do an upload into this case so soon is that there are enormous parallels with the Zodiac Killer. If you follow this channel at all, we've done numerous uploads on the Zodiac Killer. And the biggest thing that I was noticing is just there are just so many parallels. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders and the Zodiac Killer, and the sort of perpetrator in the Moonlight Murders goes by the Phantom Killer. And like even on some sources it's written as the Phantom Slasher, but I don't see too many kind of first-hand things referring to the Moonlight Murderer as the Phantom Slasher. Anyway, that's not too important, but it's just something that I noticed. And once again, this case is going on in Texarkana, Texas, 1946. It began in February of 1946, and the murderers, well, the last confirmed murder was in May of that year. So we have a rather small time frame when these murders could have taken place. And once again, that's also another parallel with the Zodiac Killer. That's another similarity. Because when I did the upload for Paul Stine on this channel, Paul Stine was the taxi driver that was murdered by the Zodiac Killer. We sort of said that the bulk of Zodiac activity took place in a rather small amount of time as well. It's more than 3 months. Like, it's roughly a 3-month time frame with the Moonlight Murders. But when it comes to the Zodiac Killer, we had Paul Stine being murdered on October 11th of 1969, and the first Zodiac killings were December 20th, 1968. Not even a solid year of Zodiac activity that would become the legend that it sort of is. And that's what I think kind of happened with the Zodiac Killer. And I'm going to be kind of going back and forth between the two cases because I think it's quite actually important. I was even watching this one channel. The YouTube user just named Sophie, and she has something else in her username, but her first name is Sophie. And she talked about the similarities between the Zodiac Killer and the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. And I was just like, there's just so many things. Like, there's even this theory that she mentioned that the Zodiac Killer was indeed the Phantom Killer involved with the Moonlight Murders. I think that that is kind of a little bit of a far-out theory, but what is much more likely is this actually became the influence that kind of inspired the Zodiac Killer to go about this. And that's kind of why I was so kind of eager to do this upload today. And what I would really kind of like to say is, it seems like the Zodiac Killer would have looked into this case, the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, and the Zodiac would have been like, okay, I see what this guy's doing, but I could do it better, or I could be more epic. And that's why I said the word legend earlier on. The Zodiac would be thinking that, like, I could become legendary And the Zodiac is something that is very, very famous, whereas this seems like it is somewhat widely covered in true crime areas, but I had never heard of these cases until a couple days ago. But yeah, going back all the way to 1946, it sounds like a very, very terrible and more like terrorizing set of events. You have this person putting on kind of a white pillowcase, a white hood of some sort with two eye holes cut out, and at first it begins by targeting lovers' lanes. And the first two victims, I believe, were 29 for the guy, and the girl was 17 years old at the time. And this is also something else that the Zodiac did, targeting lovers' lanes, targeting couples. And that YouTube user I mentioned, Sophie, like she was talking about this, and then she's kind of saying, "Oh, that's exactly like the Zodiac killer." And I was like, "Wait a second. The murder of Paul Stein, that wasn't a lover's lane killing. That wasn't what happened at all. He killed the taxi driver and stole his wallet and, things like that. And that was not a lover's lane killing." But then the Texarkana Moonlight Murders also changed shape. The final killing in that one is also out of pattern. Because there's a very big pattern with the Zodiac Killer, and it seems like the same pattern is kind of existing with the Moonlight Murders. The final victims from the Texarkana Moonlight incident is that, I believe if I recall correctly, a man was sitting in his house, and he's like kind of in an armchair listening to a radio show, and he is shot through the window. And when his wife noticed the blood, she goes to the phone to try and call the police, but then she is shot as well. Just as she gets to the phone, cranks it twice, and then she is shot also. So it's like the killer broke pattern for the final murders. That's why I'm just thinking. I don't really think that these things are coincidental between the Zodiac and the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. It really seems like somebody took this model and tried to expand upon it, most likely because they thought that they could become a more epic serial killer. But once again, the hood as well. The Zodiac wore a hood very famously, but much more elaborate with the Zodiac symbol and wearing black and even like the sunglasses over it. I'm sure you've seen those depictions of it at some point. Everybody has. But with the Moonlight Murders, it's like just a very simple kind of white cloth described as what looks like a pillowcase, and almost reminds me of Friday the 13th Part 2. But it's like, yeah, like a pillowcase with two eye holes cut out. And I also say, though, that a very big difference between these two cases, the Zodiac and the Moonlight Murders, is that we have a list of suspects, right? Both cases have lists of suspects, but the one for the Moonlight Murders is not 1,500 people long. So we can actually go through some of these, and in future uploads, I hope we will, to kind of look at the likelihood of these individuals being involved with the Zodiac killings. Sorry, with the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. Like, what is the likelihood of this suspect? What is the evidence suggesting with the Moonlight Murders that we're talking about now? But I do have to kind of insist, like, the similarities are just, it's something that I don't think is purely coincidental. One of the things, though, that might actually be a genuine coincidence is both the Moonlight Murders and the Zodiac Killer ended up with 5 complete murders. Like, for example, both of them tried to kill more people than that. This might be something that I think is purely coincidental. They definitely tried to kill more people than that, but it's like some people just survived. And they both ended up with 5 confirmed killings. But with the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, I believe 3 other people were severely injured, but they did survive. Now, when it's coming to this case, this is something that I really wanted to learn more about. And I was going through things on YouTube, but it seems so many people are just reading off of an introduction to the Texarkana Moonlight Murder Mystery. And like I said, we can do a lot of things over the next couple days. I hope to have a series of uploads on this come out because I really want to learn more about this case, and I really want to discuss some theories once the time comes and really discuss the likelihood of each individual suspect. So look out for some uploads on this channel about the Texarkana Moonlight Murders over the next couple days, and we're going to get into some other cases as well because I was already planning on doing some other true crime cases for the channel. But we had this great suggestion from somebody, and once I sort of found the parallels between the Zodiac Killer and the Moonlight Murders, I was like, we just have to say something out there, and I have to learn more about this for myself. But I would also say that, and this is a total commentary point, that I think that these kind of masked killers kind of they kind of rise up more frequently than we would think. Because I was remembering this one case from America's Most Wanted way back when I was a kid. I used to watch America's Most Wanted every Saturday night. It was on at 9 p.m. right after Cops, and they showed this one case once where one guy targeted he targeted two people. One There were a couple in a car at a lover's lane, a makeout point, whatever you'd like to call it. And he was wearing a mask, and he had some sort of either a weapon or a piece of farm equipment that was like it was as long as a broom handle. It was not an axe, like long as a broom handle, and there was a kind of blade at the end of some sort. Maybe it was like a pruning tool for trees or something like that. But he broke into the car and he started swinging at them, stabbing both of them multiple times. I remember thinking about that as a kid. Holy crap, that's so creepy. Not in a scary way, but almost like in a kind of a disgusting way. But I believe that particular individual didn't say anything, whereas the Moonlight Murderer did say some stuff. But I mean, it's not about that these things are all identical. But I just think that this could be something that is kind of like a phenomenon that happens more often than we actually want to admit, or more often than we actually realize that it's kind of like someone targets lovers' lanes wearing a mask. I mean, this could be numerous people could have been kind of inspired by these murders from the past, and who knows where this individual got his inspiration because he's never been apprehended. These are all unsolved things. I would say though about the guy that I mentioned from America's Most Wanted, I almost thought that that was going to be tied into the New Orleans Axeman case, but when I was learning more about the New Orleans Axeman, it turns out that that's a different issue. I would say though that the Texarkana Moonlight Murders definitely do sound terrifying. They became the kind of subject of the movie The Town That Dreaded Sundown, which I hear is loosely based on it. I think there's actually a copy on YouTube for free, and it's also you can pay for it. And I'm gonna watch that one soon, but I'm waiting to find someone to watch it with me. I'm the only person I know like in my circle that watches horror films and even thriller films for that matter. So I really like to watch it with someone. Like I like to just show people horror films and just like you gotta give it a chance, sort of. But I digress from that. I mean, this is like a case that I think it has a lot of potential of being solved based on the fact that we actually have a small list of suspects that has been put forward, and it's not 1,500 people long. And I think we can actually learn about this because I'm already sort of developing some strong opinions about some of the suspects that they have, and we'll discuss that in the next couple episodes. But I definitely would say that sounds like a very terrorizing issue. One of the things I would note though, we got the small bulk of time with the Zodiac killers, like December to October of the following year. We have an even smaller amount of time with the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, February of 1946 to May of 1946. Why stop? Well, with the Texarkana mystery, I mean, like, this is written very clearly, I believe, on almost any source that is kind of like using the general public discussion points about the case. They're saying that the Texas Rangers came in, and the Texas Rangers slowly phased out, and they just kind of slowly left town, not to give the impression that it was time to kill again. They didn't want to give the murderer, the Phantom Killer, the impression that it was now okay to commit murders again, that you aren't being watched. They were very careful about it. Well, that's one thing, but with the Zodiac Killer, I was once again listening to an individual named Lyndon Lafferty. I mentioned him multiple times on the channel. He was a call-in guest to a radio show once, and he talked about, like some books that were written by a professor at Stanford who was, writing books about serial killers, and he was saying that psychologist argues that if a serial killer ceases activity completely, it is very unlikely that he will kill again. So that could kind of be sort of a motivation for why the killer stopped all activity after May of 1946 that we know of in any confirmed fashion. I mean, it's almost like I'm trying to say is that this kind of short time frame, the Zodiac Killer, the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, it actually seems like something that is rather normal when it comes to individuals such as serial killers. I think there could be total exceptions to that. I think there could totally be people who are going against the grain. But that's also, I mean, that's just something to note. That if a serial killer completely stops, it's unlikely that he will kill again. So says this guy, Lyndon Lafferty, who's the author of the book The Zodiac Killer Cover Up, aka The Silence Badge. And he was just a call in guest to a radio show, and he's describing what he has read in a couple books, and he claims he's also met that psychologist and, had a bit of a discussion about it. But there it is still. I mean, I just wanted to bring that up. It's like to try and say that this small time frame of murderous activity is not unheard of, and it's also, as this guy argues, not abnormal. But we also have serial killers functioning in a variety of ways. Whether it's somebody like Andrei Chikatilo, from Russia, who's like trying to kind of kill for sexual pleasure, and Alexander Pichushkin, also from the former Soviet Union, much like Chikatilo, but he is trying to commit 64 murders like he was the chessboard killer, and he just kind of had a goal, and that was sort of what it was all about. But still, it's sort of serial killers can function in a variety of ways. But the thing is that, I mean, I just thought it was a very interesting point that was brought up, that if they really have that major cease in activity, that they most likely will not revert back to their killing ways. And that's just something that kind of seemed to be the case in Texarkana. When I was listening to YouTubers talk about this, they would pronounce that town so many ways. Like, I say Texarkana. I've heard of Texarkana, Texas before, but I heard Texarkana, 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 the way I say it. I mean, it seems like a lot of people are just kind of going with whatever pronunciation feels best. I mean, yes, we've heard of it from time to time, Texas Arkansas border, sure, but, well, this is a new case for me, and it's something new that I hope to be exploring. And this will be one of the times when I'll be kind of going through things very, very loosely, and then we'll be putting out uploads as new things come right in. All right, well, thank you to everybody who has made it this far into the podcast. And if you have anything to say at all about what we've discussed so far about the Zodiac Killer or the Phantom Killer, please drop a comment below. If you like this upload, you can hit the like button. And if you want to subscribe, you're always welcome. You can hit the subscribe button too. Thank you for listening,